How are you doing today? Welcome to another show for Black Panther, the fan fiction series. I'm just messing with y'all. What's up, y'all? It's your man Nico Bean with the Steam. I'm coming at y'all with another Mean Green True Spit Machine. This is my fourth episode for my Black Panther fan fiction series called The Lost Prince of Wakanda. And so, in this episode, we are going to be talking about something very, very exquisite. Let's see here. I'll be talking about how in episode 4, uh, this is going to be diving into a little bit about how Okoye helps, well, continuing the story of how Okoye and Ndala become a couple initially through way of Ndala going about finding out who he is, um, how he basically is, like I said, the Prince of Wakanda. The first point I'm going to hit on is Ndala spending more time with Okoye, and I have a snippet of that story. I'm going to read it to you guys. Let's see. Oh, it's right here. And this is a love story arc. Um, the name Ndala was given to him by Okoye and T'Challa. It's not really a code name, but they gave him a name that suited him when he obtained the mantle of prince. Not really mantle, but the status of prince. And so it says here, when Ndala was training with Okoye one day, she started to talk to him about her husband, Wakabi. Well, then husband, because I'm pretty sure, well, we know from Wakanda Forever that apparently they're still married, which I don't understand why. But she told him how distracted he was with the fact that she felt like T'Challa lied to him about bringing Claw to justice after he promised that he would bring him back to Wakanda to face justice for what he had done all those years ago. She went on to tell him that he ultimately betrayed both his closest friend and his country when he sided with Njadaka, Killmonger, to take over the world by force. She ultimately divorced him and gave him partial custody of their children. I don't know if they have children or not. I just put that in there. But after receiving a day of heavy training from both T'Challa and Okoye, Ndala retired to his quarters. Before he headed there, he asked Okoye if she wanted to come over and help him with something that had been bugging him since he had arrived in Wakanda. What is it, my Inkosona? She replied. Ndala went on to share that ever since he was a child living in the States, he always felt like something was missing from his life, like he was brought into this world for a reason. After hearing that from Ndala, her heart felt like she had a responsibility to help him find his way in this new chapter of his life. She started off by saying that if he wanted to find his place in Wakanda, he should start by finding his roots. Start out by finding where your ancestors are from, Okoye said. And Ndala took her advice and he started doing his research. During his search, Okoye fell in love with him each and every day they spent time with one another. And Ndala felt equally in love with her when he saw that she was willing to help him find his way. This bond became even more stronger as they shared. This bond became even more unbreakable as time went on and having their adventures and missions together. On one mission, T'Challa asked Ndala to retrieve the stolen vibranium that Ultron had utilized after taking it off of Claw's hands. This feat proved to be especially challenging, for it was only the third mission that Ndala had been given him by his mentor. Okoye, who had been watching and observing his every step, followed him just like she followed T'Challa. The only difference being that she was like a sister to T'Challa. Once he rooted himself in the situation and focused on the mission, Ndala began to plot how he would get the vibranium back into Wakandan territory. As fate would have it, he wouldn't have to face this task alone. Okoye was also tasked with helping Ndala bring back the vibranium in one piece. All in all, Ndala, Okoye, and 6 teams of Hattusilize were sent to retrieve the vibranium from Sokovia. Um, if you can imagine for a second a mission that T'Challa gives my character, uh, and he positions him in a really not really testing, but he is just testing him. T'Challa is testing him to show that he has the intestinal fortitude and the basically I say the balls to complete any task that is bestowed upon him or given to him by either the people via the council, the Wakandan council, or someone who is basically an authority that needs something done that is important to the protection and safety of the borders of Wakanda. After successfully retrieving the vibranium, Okoye reported to T'Challa to give her assessment of his pupil. He's becoming more and more like you, T'Challa, Okoye began in her recorded message. Each and every step he takes it with precision and makes sure it is the right decision to make. While on the mission, we will cross paths with the Sokovian government and the United Nations. They told Ndala that he was supposed to hand over the vibranium to the Sokovian government, for it was their responsibility to take care of the matter and that they would in turn take it from there. Ndala would not budge, not even for a second. T'Challa's face grew wide with astonishment and pride. What else do you have to report? Asked T'Challa. Okoye then went on to say that the Sokovians had the UN at their side, and once again they tried to insist on taking the vibranium for themselves. Ndala stepped towards them and gave them a final warning before he began to engage them in hand-to-hand combat. On cue, the Dora Milaje and Hattusilize fell in line with fending off the platoons of militia that had gathered around them. The Hattusilize were almost outgunned if it had not been for Ndala jumping in to aid them after dealing with a small group of Sokovian soldiers himself. This story is not really dragged out, but it is very, very influential to what I know my character to be. This specific scene, if you can mold it into your curiosity, or not curiosity, but your sense of action and adventure. But this displays his tenacity in the field. This displays his dedication to not only learning who he is and becoming a part of Wakanda itself, it speaks to who he is on the inside. So, after Okoye and Ndala finish that mission, they come home to Wakanda to find T'Challa waiting for them. T'Challa then says, "My pupil, I am so proud of you." And even though I'm coming up with that on the fly, he gives him a nod of approval. They did have a feast, and I have to probably write some of this stuff down because I'm thinking about this on the fly. But T'Challa and Ndala have become, well, I'm sorry, Ndala and Okoye have become one with each other. They learn who they are. Well, Ndala learned who he is and who he is set to be in the future. Let's see here. Okay, the next part I'm going to talk about is M'Baku challenging. Not M'Baku, but Ndala meets M'Baku and his distant relatives Njoku and Mbanu. These two characters that I created are his distant cousins that live in the not border tribe, but the Jabari tribe, and they are essentially two powerhouses that they of course they worship the gorilla god Anuman, and they are very, very close to M'Baku. And so I do have their intros right here. Let's see. The Blood Brothers. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay, here we go right here. Mbanu and Njoku, blood brothers. These two powerhouse brothers are a force to reckon with. Born and raised as Jabari warriors, they were the equivalent of a Hercules and Ares. Mbanu being Ares and Njoku being Hercules. They were trained by Jabari's finest warriors and eventually set out to learn from more gifted warriors in Wakanda. They traveled to Burning Azaria to learn from the scribes and learn where the Jabari fell within the ranks of the tribes. When they learned that the Jabari had decided to isolate themselves from the west of Wakanda, they were shocked how much their homeland had evolved around them. When they returned to the Jabari lands, they pleaded with their cousin M'Baku to consider changing the way that the Jabari went about evolving. Unwavered by their pleas, M'Baku had them banished for 4 months until the summer solstice came about. Um, that's just them two, but the whole sense of Ndala learning where his family is from and learning where they're from, it comes about to where I have it to, like I said, Jabari, border tribe. And so when Ndala gets to the point of coming to the Jabari lands, before he even meets his cousins, he is challenged by M'Baku. Um, at the let's see, let's see. Okay, at the behest of uh, T'Challa, T'Challa takes it upon himself to um, bring him around the council of Wakanda, the the Elder Council. I'm sorry, and M'Baku is present when he is introduced. Initially, Ndala is well, not Ndala, but M'Baku is very skeptical of him. He does not know who he is. He's never heard of him from either his cousins nor any of his relatives that live around M'Baku in Jabari lands. When he gets back to the Jabari lands, he asks Mbanu and Njoku if they know anything about Ndala. They don't. It takes someone that overhears their conversation that is knowledgeable of Ndala's parents and how they left Wakanda to go on a mission inside of the states. And when they complete that mission, they decide to stay. Um, when Ndala is brought into the fray and learning of why his parents stayed, he finds that they wanted to say, per se, find a different way of living in life. And when Ndala came about, they decided not to make the drastic move to bring him back home yet, but to let him take that journey and those steps himself. And I know this probably sounds a little bit like what the first movie for Black Panther did, but the way that I see it, the way that they had, they still show bits and pieces of where he's from in Wakanda. They didn't make hints like in Jadaka's dad did, but they actually had Wakanda set in front of him. That's how he knows who T'Challa is. That's how he knows where the family bloodline goes from and goes into the era of Shuri, T'Challa, and so on. Um, uh, the next part I want to get into is T'Challa introduces him to Shuri and Queen Mother Ramonda. And the mentorship that Queen Mother even decides to take on to give my character is a mother and son bond because, like T'Challa, he is keen when he learns who his people really are, where his roots are from. He decides to take on the mentality of a king and starts to learn what the people's needs are and how they go about um, having to be able to accomplish those needs and meet those demands, basically. Um, so, uh, all in all, in this episode, for episode 4, basically Ndala is on track to become the next king of Wakanda, if said if said thing basically no, I'm sorry, not king. He becomes the hand of T'Challa, but he's a very powerful hand at that. And he's not really the advisor, but T'Challa looks at him to show him the ropes, show him how he can walk and talk like a king, and take that mentality of being a prince and learning everything that he needs to learn to basically be a very not really influential part of society in Wakanda, but a prominent role that he uses to push the agenda forward of helping T'Challa, helping Wakanda, helping the efforts that they have, humanitarian needs around the world and stuff like that. But yep, that's the episode for today, and I'll be coming at y'all with another one. Until I do, be good and be good to each other. Love y'all.